Welcome to Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega. This is episode number 51. I'm recording it on Tuesday, September 15th, 2020 at 9:57 p.m. Eastern Time. And, I've been thinking all day about pretty much ending this particular 51 or 50, however, I may do a few more episode series, and creating a new one, because what I've found is that that this is about morality. This isn't necessarily about cellular agriculture. Yes, that is a huge answer to this, but part of that has to be, we've got to get this global cooperation happening for this to take place, and we've got a lot of moral issues to address before we can do that. Getting the entire world to work on this. So I mean, the idea came to me, like, I guess the new show might be called COVID-19, God and Science. I think it's important. It's really important that, although the media and our politicians just completely ignore the moral dimension of this, completely ignore the connection between our farming of animals and these zoonotic diseases that are the result of this farming, can completely ignore, our religious directives to be kind to animals, and ignore our understanding that, we live in a world where we're rewarded when we do good and punished when we do bad. I mean, that seems, that may not seem like it's absolute. It may be. It just may not be apparent to us, but that seems to be the way things work. So I think, the moral component is very, very important. So I think, with this new series, and again, I'll run the idea by the station manager, hopefully tomorrow, the next day, and maybe we'll start this new series as soon as later in the week. I don't know, Thursday, Friday. Well, no, maybe Monday. I don't know, sometime soon. Yeah, let me just go through some of the reasons why for this shift. All right, cellular agriculture is the most humane, or the most intelligent thing we could do is all go vegan. Okay, that would be the ideal. Because eating meat, dairy, and eggs, maybe fish also. I mean, fish has so much mercury nowadays. I mean, like, not eating those products would create a much healthier global population. So many illnesses come from the consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs, and some from fish. So yeah, I mean, like, but I mean, we've got to kind of like be a bit realistic and expect that goal is a bit perhaps too optimistic for us to achieve anytime soon. So that's the reason for cellular agriculture. But the other thing is that, like, that's not the only answer. A third answer that's really resonating more and more with me is this idea that if we pump $50–100 billion into universal vaccines, instead of taking 10, 20, 30 years, excuse me, like they may, with the status quo funding, the level of financing that kind of research receives now, we could have these universal vaccines maybe within a decade, 5–10 years. It's a much, much more difficult challenge, biochemically, whatever, in terms of the research. But it's possible now. Now, I'm conflicted about that particular solution. And basically, this is about creating a pandemic-free world, or as much of one as possible, 99+% pandemic risk-free. And the reason I'm ambivalent about that solution is because it would not address the cruelty to animals, which is, I believe, is the foundational cause of this, from a spiritual perspective. Not even from a, well, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, if we were to develop universal vaccines, fine. We would, like, these outbreaks would happen in animals. We just wouldn't be affected by them. but I mean, I've been very religious all my life, and my guess is that I don't think God is going to allow us to do that. I don't think God is going to, bless us with that kind of solution that allows us to continue literally, paying people to torture over 70 billion, land animals every year. So, yeah. Yeah, and the challenge, I mean, fine. The answer is yes, cellular agriculture. Okay, that's the answer. But that's not enough. In other words, like the real question is, like, first of all, we should really explore how we as a global population can be so evil, so callous, so cruel to all these animals. I mean, we need to understand that, because this cruelty doesn't just manifest in this way toward animals. It manifests in ways that reach every one of us every day. I mean, you see all that violence on television, that's a manifestation of our sick ways. How we enjoy that. People, these networks produce these shows because people like watching people suffer. I mean, that's sick. I'm sorry. We're, there's a lot of sickness out there, and we need to basically explore who we are and how we got that way and how we can change before we can change enough to force our politicians to fund cellular agriculture and do the work of creating these products that are not only cruelty-free, they don't involve any suffering for animals at all, but will keep us safe as I think we need to be from future pandemics. So it's going to be a harder show, I guess. But I mean, this current show evolved from my previous series. I think there were about 62 episodes. What was it? Weekday coronavirus-driven mind stuff, where I just like talked about whatever. And so, like, by talking about whatever, just this emerged. This series emerged. And so I imagine now, by talking about this new series emerged, and I imagine as I begin to produce episodes, it will become more concrete. I'll just like reason out various aspects of it and perhaps do some research and present some ideas in terms of what kind of progress we can make, what we need to do to essentially become more virtuous people. So, like, all right, that's the God component, that's the morality component. The other component, again, is the science. Yeah, and I guess we have to continue with that. I mean, I've been presenting that in this series, just that, like, if you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist, or if you don't believe that God rewards and punishes us for what we do, then fine, you can still appreciate the science that, according to the science, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we get the next pandemic. And if you've seen the most recent episodes and seen that table that I've been presenting, you'll understand that it's very reasonable for another pandemic to come within the next 10 years, or 20 years. And that's too soon. That's, and imagine, it's very reasonable to imagine that we can have a pandemic that's like 40 times worse, 40 times more lethal. There have been various viruses that have had that characteristic. And if they mutate, let's say with a virus that spreads as easily as coronavirus because you don't have to have symptoms to spread it, then we're in huge, huge trouble. So, so yeah, so I think, you know, I got, yeah, from the way I'm thinking right now, the show's going to happen. I'll email the station manager tomorrow asking for the change. Maybe as early as Thursday, I'll start um, creating the episodes. So, because yeah, I mean, like so many, I mean, like that's, I mean, we can extend this to so many problems in the world. It's not just preventing pandemics. It's not just, you know, stopping being so cruel to animals. It's like, you know, the racism, the inequality, so many, the denial and ignoring of climate change, you know, just the inaction on it, the abortion, the global poverty, you know, there's, we, we need, before we can do any of those things, we need a major moral reformation. Because how are we going to, like, that's, you know, like maybe, you know, maybe COVID-19, God and religion doesn't well enough reflect, you know, that idea. You know, think about it some more. But that's, you know, that's our challenge. You know, we want a fairer election system. We want to address the wildfires, climate change, so many problems. You know, these are moral challenges. It's not like we lack the technology. It's not like we lack the infrastructure, the institutions, the organization. We've got all that. It's not like we lack the resources, you know, the money. We've got more, beyond more than we need. The only thing we lack is the will, the moral will. So, so yeah, in this new series, that's what we will explore. And as I've done with this series, I'm not going to lay a guilt trip on everyone because, you know, actually, according to the research, you know, they've done studies on doing this, on shaming people like this. And a lot of times it's just like you shame people like that and they just turn off. They just go into denial. So that, you know, so basically I'm going to try to remind people, yes, we're really being evil, you know, in so many ways collectively. But we have to constantly remind ourselves that we didn't choose to be born into this world. We didn't choose to be born into a world where this kind of evil is even questioned. It's kind of like having grown up in the South in the 1750s, 1790s, where slavery was unquestioned. You know, people like didn't, you know, it was accepted. Nobody, you know, thought about how cool it was. Okay. So, you know, we're born into this world and we're conditioned by our, not just our parents, by our institutions, the media, our schools. You know, nobody, you know, you don't remember in school ever having been, you know, keyed in on how horrible we're being, you know, in so many ways, and to these animals especially. And again, you know, just, you know, remember, I mean, this new series has to be, you know, focused on COVID-19 and maybe, I don't know if I should change it to pandemics, because like this is not just about, you know, COVID-19, it's about preventing future pandemics. But again, it's a moral challenge, and to the extent that we blame ourselves, that we hold ourselves fundamentally responsible in the sense of free will. I mean, there's, you know, I've talked about this before. I spent the last 10 years basically trying to educate the public, you know, just trying to get people to understand. You got four, I mean, like, this is an easy way to explain it. Because some people, like, who are just not all that bright think they are. It's kind of like an arrogance that's like arrogant. Talk about epidemics. People who just aren't that bright. We've got four top scientific minds. And you got to respect that. You have to, if you're not respecting that, you're not respecting science. You're not respecting what this world is. It's, so like Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, Albert Einstein are four top minds coming from three different fields. All of them concluded that free will is an illusion. But no, stuff is not up to us. This evil that you're doing is not up to you, so you shouldn't feel guilty. You shouldn't beat yourself up about it. You shouldn't beat up others, because when you do that, you disempower yourself. You're wrapped up in so much guilt and self-condemnation that you run. You don't have the capacity to look at the circumstances, the situation objectively, because what you're seeing is so much of a threat to your self-image, your self-identity. So, but the idea is like, these four top minds were not wrong, okay? We don't have a free will. And that's I think, important to keep in mind. If we're gonna be so honest with our level of evil, which is, it's, and we'll be trying to understand that, because like, there are two books that were published, one by Peter Diamandis called Abundance. He's I think he's a billionaire. He's a rich guy. He a tech guy. I don't know what he did, but and his book is called Abundance. And there's another one by a Swedish researcher, Johan Norberg, I believe, called Progress. And these two books just chronicle the really, really strong fact. It's not opinion, it's not editorializing. We're living in such an amazing world. This world is so much better in so many ways than the world 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. We're living in the best world ever. I mean, less poverty, less violence, less child mortality. People are living older. We're living longer. We're healthier. I mean, like by so many different measures, we're living better lives. So you would think that would make us happier, and our happiness would translate to being more virtuous. Now, like years ago, I did a TV series on happiness called The Happiness Show, and then one of the founding, I think, hypotheses of the show was that if you help people to become happier, they will become more virtuous. Because basically, like, people tend to do things that are not virtuous in an attempt to become happier. So, if you make people really happy, they don't have to do those things. But, in hindsight, I think I maybe overestimated that that dynamic. I mean, there are a lot of people, for example, we're familiar with the experience of children being raised up in privilege and like, let's say, extreme privilege, let's say millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires. And sometimes being brought up in that kind of environment will spoil people. Will make people feel entitled and make people feel callous, indifferent to everyone else. We need to figure that out, because that's what's happening. So many more people are becoming rich now. There's so many more, and these rich people, unfortunately, because of our corrupt political system, they have control of what happens on our planet, not just in this country, but throughout the world. So, if what happens is in the hands of these people who've been spoiled by privilege, by too much money, by not living in the quote unquote real world, that presents a problem for all of us. So, all right, so I have a feeling, yes, I'm going to do this show because it makes sense. I mean, like, after 51 episodes of trying to get you to understand that that cellular agriculture is the answer. There's, I mean, vaccines are too far away, 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, like, we can't really reasonably take that risk. And, I would think maybe I'm a bit too hopeful about things like this, but I would think that the media would begin reporting this, but they're not. Once in a while you'll see a progressive, let's say a vegan organization or something, published a piece about the connection between factory farming and these pandemics. You'll see some pieces coming out about this new industry, this new cellular agriculture, clean meat culture, meat industry that can produce much healthier meat, fish, dairy, egg products for us that don't involve any cruelty. So but you're not seeing any journalists tie them together, and then the third, prong of this is that you're not seeing anybody talk about the fact that, like, at the rate of investment for this new industry, there's about $1.5 billion invested in it right now. It'll probably take 10 or longer years or more years for these products to be marketed, to be in supermarkets and restaurants. And so the third prong of this is we need to invest $50 billion at least, which is 1/2 of what we're expected to spend on this coronavirus. The Congressional Budget Office in May, that's their estimate, that's their number when it's all said and done. So to spend 1/2 of 1% of what we're spending on this one to prevent the next one, it's a bargain. It's a bargain. But nobody's talking about this. So again, I think this new series will be about exploring why. So we've got an understanding of why we're in this mess. We've got an understanding of how to get out of this mess. Well, hopefully people are working on them. Like, even that's not happening. Earlier today, I Googled this. I couldn't believe this. I Googled N95. I want to get another N95 mask, right? And then I clicked the shopping link on the Google, search page. And the message was like, we could not find any entries for N95. And yeah, if you know N95, that's the standard, 3-layered mask that's the safest against transmission. So, I mean, I can't even begin to understand that. So basically, I hope that what's happening, to contain this, what needs to happen to contain this virus is, but notwithstanding, we need to work on. Also, it's not just about containing this pandemic. So we don't want to be in this situation again. And I think, now people, I'm sensing this. I'm sensing this out in the street. People are distancing themselves more now. I'm seeing it, at least in White Plains. I'm seeing more of an acknowledgement, a cognizance of what the, and I just read an article yesterday that, the question came, and I posed it on a recent episode, how long are we going to be wearing these masks for? How many more months? And it may be a couple more years, and, even after how many months it's been, I don't know, 7, 8 months, however long, people are beginning to understand the kind of mess we're in, and that it's not, most people, with the news cycles, the media, they just go from one thing to the next, and it's kind of like, that's like their strategy for not doing anything. They just bounce around and nothing ever gets done. But with this, you can't do that. This is here day after day, after week, after month, and apparently after year. So, yeah, this is something that people, I think, are hopefully waking up to, in the sense of recognizing that it is, fundamentally a moral issue. If you're religious, if you believe in morality, if you believe in karma and what goes around comes around, just desserts, then you might understand how we invited this with our cruelty, with our indifference, an inexplicable cruelty beyond belief, that we could do that to so many, sentient animals, so animals we know feel pain. So, all right, well, so yeah, I'm sensing now this is going to be a much harder show to do than this series, but I think it's going to be a lot more productive because again, it's going to get at the heart of this. It is a moral issue. It's not about technology. It's not about resources, and it is about organization and collaboration. But those are moral issues too. We can become organized as a world to do this. We can get every country on board, but it's going to take a moral reformation, So, all right, what else? Yeah, and I guess, yeah, I got to think more about the title. COVID-19, God and Science. I'm not, that may be a bit too vague. I mean, I want to bring God into this because 80, 90% of us here in the United States believe in God or a higher power. And the media ignore this dimension, this aspect of it, and the politicians ignore it. I mean, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I believe in God. I go to church, whatever." But come on, they don't inject God into this that much. And I think this may be, I think we do have to address the global poverty and the abortion and the ignoring climate change. These these other major sins that we're doing, and we're just rationalizing whatever. All right, so we've got less than a minute. So yeah, as far as I know, I guess I'll do another episode of this tomorrow, which will be Wednesday, and maybe as early as Thursday, I will start the new series. So catch this, and it'll be at the same time, White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 if you get Verizon, at 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday. And, the episodes will be on YouTube, as these are, and on iTunes eventually, and Spotify. All right, so I hope you're having a good evening, and God willing, I'll see you tomorrow.